Hello, I'm Dominic Walker, JMW's Inside Man. My guest is Stephen Taylor Heath. Stephen is a partner at JMW Solicitors and head of sports law. So, Stephen, what happened with the Formula One at the weekend?
Well, in essence, Dominic, Formula One's obviously a very dangerous sport. And so whilst the race is going on, if an incident happens, that means they have to invoke the safety protocols, then the race director, Michael Massey, has to direct what happens next. Now, when one of the cars crashed, notwithstanding that Lewis Hamilton was 15 seconds ahead, he has to decide either to deploy a virtual safety car where everybody drives slower but keeps the gap, or a safety car where everybody bunches up behind the safety car, or a red flag where effectively the race is stopped and started again. In hindsight, everybody agreed the fairest thing that could have happened is for there to be a red flag and effectively to restart the race, which would have allowed everybody to change their tyres. What actually happened is it was a safety car, and you got an unfortunate situation where Michael Massey was being lobbied by the two teams with regard to what should happen next. Now, under the regulations, under 48.12, what should have happened is that all of the cars that had been lapped, including the cars between Verstappen and Hamilton, should have unlapped themselves, which would have left Verstappen behind Hamilton. Now, if there'd been more than one lap left in the race, that's what would have happened. But in fact, because there was only one lap left, only some of the cars overtook. And Mercedes is saying that that was a breach of the particular relevant regulation 48.12, and that they're complaining about that and saying that the rules were incorrectly deployed.
Is this something that Mercedes can appeal at a later date?
So yes, Mercedes can complain about the outcome, and they did on the evening. They lodged a formal protest, which was heard by FIA on the evening, and that was ruled against them. One of the first things that they said was that Mercedes had not objected to the people that had heard that protest, and they said that under their regulations, the race director was entitled to do what he was entitled to do. If effectively Mercedes did not consider that to be the end of the matter, normally you would take this type of matter to somewhere like the Court of Arbitration for Sport in Switzerland, but under the FIA regulations, you have to go to the International Court of Appeal, which is constituted by FIA, but is intended to be an independent arbitration forum. So the judges that would effectively decide this matter are expected to be entirely independent of FIA. That said, of course, it's constituted under FIA's rules and regulations.
You mentioned that a complaint was almost made there and then. Is it common practice for sports teams to take lawyers with them? And can you advise sports stars and sports clubs?
Yeah, well, if the particular sport itself wants the particular matter to be dealt with on the day because of the integrity of the prize giving and things like that, then it's important to have your legal advisor on hand. And it's important that that particular legal advisor is entirely familiar with the rules and regulations of the particular sport. We advise in a range of sports in relation to the rules and regulations, be it rugby, football and boxing, for example. All of them have their own internal disciplinary and rules and regulation procedures and arbitral procedures. So the lawyers themselves need to be familiar with those particular regulations, but they also need to be on hand, because if you want to deal with it there and then, which was FIA's intention on the particular day, then it just so happened that Mercedes were alive to this potential situation and actually had their QC with them trackside so that he could go in with them for the initial appeal. So he would have been making submissions in relation to rules and regulations, whereas Red Bull would have been making their submissions based on their understanding of the regulations, but not necessarily with legal assistance. So if it's to be dealt with in real time on the day, yes, they need to be on hand. If there's going to be an appeal later in the date, then obviously you need to engage with your lawyers so that you make sure that you make those submissions because they're going to be heard by probably quite an esteemed panel.
Thank you for your guidance, Stephen. And if you are involved in sport, perhaps an agent, a sports star, or involved with a sports club, you can contact Stephen and the sports law team at JMW Solicitors by emailing insideman@jmw.co.uk or call 0161 82 81 999. I'm Dominic Walker, JMW's Inside Man.